On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we are back from the holidays. I am so full of chocolate, I feel like my blood is just a fine sludge. And the Toronto Raptors are looking okay, which I guess is a step up. They did lose to the Clippers last night. We'll talk about that. But they also, since last we spoke, beat the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road in very convincing fashion. We'll break it all down with a bit of a Raptors temperature check with our pal Vivek Jacob on today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode, oh god, it's been so long since we recorded, I don't know the number. I'll say 1308, and maybe I'll be right, of Locked On Raptors. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. You can find me on Twitter at WoodleySean, where you can find all of my work spanning back the last 9 seasons of Toronto Raptors coverage on various platforms. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Raptors. You can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the podcast for free on your favorite audio apps, as always. And you can go to YouTube, hit the big red subscribe button, support the show in video form each and every day. If you want to see my mug and the mugs of my far better looking guests, that's the place to do it. And speaking of better-looking guests, on today's show, we are joined by our pal, Vivek Jacob of Raptors.com. We're going to dig into a very, I think, eventful last little while, despite 3 days off around Christmas for the Raptors. A lot, I think, in terms of change and evolving and sort of maybe setting the table for better times in January than we've seen so far in December for the Toronto Raptors. Here to talk about that all, as I mentioned, is our pal, Big V. Vivek, what's going on, pal?
Nothing much. Fresh off the holiday break, which is nice. I mean, it's not like we ever have to really worry about the Raptors playing on Christmas. But
literally have to win a championship for that, and then it's just a 1-year little dip, and then it's back to normal. It's great.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was nice to have that little bit of time off, and the Raptors have had a nice little run, so that it was kind of disappointing to see how things kind of fell apart in that third quarter against the Clippers, and I'm sure we will get into that. But, the vibes were still, some of that holiday cheer coming in with seeing Norm and seeing Kawhi and all the nice things they had to say about Toronto and the Raptors, and some special memories of winning the chip.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to talk about Norm later on. I think he is both of our good, in the good, the bad, and the from last night's game. I guess more so from like the last couple of games. We'll just sort of jam them all into one segment. We're going to talk about Norm later on. We are going to dive into our big takeaways here off the top, though, however. And Big V, I guess there's lots of different ways we could go with this. There's positive, there's negative. That, the second half, as you mentioned, of the Clippers game, the third quarter, where Norm Powell just kind of goes off and eviscerates Gary Trent Jr. on 17,000 consecutive blow-bys. That might sit in your mouth a little bitter tasting, but I do think, on the whole, even dating back to when they were still losing games, I would maybe even stretch it back to like the Kings game that kind of felt like the turnaround moment for the way the Raptors had been playing, not necessarily getting results, but where are you at right now? Let's sort of your big 10,000 foot view of the team and your sort of general levels of optimism or lack thereof based on what we've seen recently, encompassing a couple of really nice wins last week against the Knicks and the Cavs, of course.
Yeah, I'm not all the way there yet in terms of feeling like this team has turned things around. I think consistency is the biggest thing for me. So I want to see, a solid, 8-10 games without that big drop off like we saw in that third quarter. And then I'll believe things are good. The other thing, too, is, the 3-point shooting. I'd like to see at least the main guys have a consistent stretch of, getting it done together. That'd be nice to see. And yeah, the defense, that's what the Raptors have hung their hat on the last several years. And so when that drops off, I'm still sort of looking and saying, hey, there was a step forward. Now, is this a step back? Was it just, an off night against a very good team? And, when you're asking those questions, it's hard to say that, hey, they've turned a corner.
For sure. I mean, we definitely have to see in this upcoming stretch here where I think it's, 8 of 9 at home. They just played one of those 8, or 9 of 10, whatever it is. There's a lot of home games against some pretty good teams coming through. The Grizzlies, of course, in town tomorrow. The Suns coming through. The Bucks coming through. It's not an easy stretch of schedule, but they are getting some home cooking. And, I do think I'm generally encouraged. And maybe it's just because things were so dire there for a hot second, particularly kind of around those Magic games that they dropped back to back. I feel like that sort of sat in the mouths of people for a long time, but I've actually enjoyed watching the last good number of Raptors games, and maybe that's a low bar to clear, and we'll talk about later on in my about how maybe my brain is kind of broken as a fan at the moment, and I'm kind of trying to reckon with that. But I do
no longer
feel
waiting to watch a lump of coal. I'll give you that.
There we go. Yeah, it's there's cool intricacies on display. The Raptors are actually making some coaching changes, it seems, in terms of how they're deploying, how they're game planning, stuff like that. And so, overall, I'm generally encouraged by the direction. Of course, got to see more of it. They're still 15 and 19. They have to actually win some games and string some results together here to really kind of get everybody back on. But I do think a few things to me are kind of standing out as that's a thing to be genuinely optimistic about. Number one is that Pascal Siakam just ain't slowing down, and that dude's ridiculous. It's so fun to watch him play right now. He goes 2 of 11 last night to start it against the Clippers, still somehow finishes 13 of 24 with 36, 9, and 5. He's absurd. He's the reason you get up in the morning if you're a Raptors fan right now. It is such a delight. The way he just kind of solved the Clippers as that game went along after they gave him a whole lot of trouble early on speaks to, I think, just what an amazing player he is. It was almost like a microcosm of his career, if you will, where it's intense struggle, missing shots, wonky, release, stuff like that. And then second half, he just kind of decides, yeah, no, I'm done getting challenged by this team. Now I'm just going to walk into what did he finish? 11 of his final 13? Stupid. Yeah. He's amazing. He's so good. So that, I think, is just, starting point number one. You have a dude playing that well. You're probably going to get some results at some point. And then you couple that with, I think, maybe the biggest thing that we've seen over the last week or so from the Raptors is just making Scotty Barnes a center and letting him roll with that and sort of asking him, something that you've called for is kind of letting him cook and do the things he did well last year, just, kind of in the same circumstance, maybe with some better talent around him. And it's working. And, the last 2 games, the Cavs game, obviously, he was outstanding, probably his best road performance of the entire season. He comes back with 17, 12, and 8 in the game against the Clippers last night. Obviously, some defensive issues against Ivica Zubac, but he's enormous. He gives a lot of people problems, and the Raptors are kind of particularly tailored to get dummied by a guy like that. But the way they've used Barnes, he's working as a screener. He's getting to work on the short roll. I think that's a thing you can build upon and feel pretty optimistic about sort of the core pillars of your team being in a pretty good spot, not to mention OG's coming back to life from 3 a little bit, up near 36% after a couple of hot nights. I do think sort of the big picture stuff is encouraging and sort of trending in the right direction, even if the stuff on the fringes, like bench players not hitting threes and Fred VanVleet maybe having some back soreness and stuff like that, are to be concerned about. I do think overall the sort of the tide's moving in the right direction that you want to see it. I think all told. Am I just wearing 2 rose-colored of glasses, just sitting here? Oh, things are fine. I'm not depressed all the time watching the team anymore. So everything's great and grand. Is that a silly way for me to be looking at this? Or are there real sort of inherent concerns baked into the fabric of this team that I'm just kind of passing off because I'm so Siakam pilled that I can't really overlook it?
I think it's good for fans to hear the positive side of it, but I also, beyond what I've already said before about the consistencies, I don't know how good you can feel about the Raptors if Fred VanVleet is continuing to battle his body and can't really be himself for an extended stretch.
Sure.
And then on the other side of it, the same way we all marvel at Luka's 60, 21, and 10 night.
To beat the Knicks by 5, mind you.
In overtime. Exactly. Yes. No, the same way you look at, the fact that it needed Pascal's 52 to beat the
Yeah,
Knicks. It
sure.
needed, him being incredible against Philly to take that down to the wire.
Hmm.
It needed him, being really, really good against the Cavs and picking apart their defense and finding teammates uh, in that one. And now, this one, the first half, I guess, one real positive is you could argue that Scotty Barnes was the biggest factor in sort of keeping the offense afloat in the
Hmm.
first half,
Hmm.
where, Pascal had his struggles. Um, and obviously Gary and OG were contributors, but I thought Scotty was really, really good in that first half, whether it
Hmm.
was playmaking, pushing the pace off the boards, um, getting deep post position and finishing inside. Those are all encouraging signs to see, and we're seeing like way, way less of the jumpers, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so uh, that aspect of it is definitely a positive, right? So you mentioned OG Anunoby's 3-point shooting coming around. Obviously, he's been the second best Raptor after Pascal so far this season. So if you can check off those boxes and say, okay, Pascal, OG, Scotty, Gary really seems to be in a rhythm off the bench.
Yep.
If you can really, get Fred going at some point, then you're starting to say, hey, you can cook with some gas.
Yeah. Ultimately, yeah, like I think last night was, I think, a pretty good example of the sort of battle the Raptors are fighting if they don't have all of their 3-point shooting kind of in order, right? It was like, all right, we're going to trade hard 1-2s for hard 1-3s against an excellent defensive team that has great shot making. Like
Right.
that's where they're going to run up against the elite teams into problems if they can't figure out their 3-point shooting. I still think, they're not going to go 6 of 23 all the time. At some point, you would think the dam is going to keep on bursting like it did against the Cavs, where they went crazy. They're not going to put up as many threes as they did in that game. What were they? In 19 of 37? They're not going to hit 19 threes every time out, but like, if you can find some sort of happy medium between 6 and 19, they might have the juice. And I think the play of those sort of core pillars that you're talking about, Siakam, OG, Barnes, we talk about Fred, all of that, but like, those three guys are the ones we've all kind of agreed are the core guys going forward. They're the important ones who are kind of keeping things humming. That, I think, is reason to be optimistic, even if the Fred thing is of concern and the sort of overall strength of the defense is not quite there. We're going to come back on the other side. I want to get into the idea, because I was kind of running away with my thoughts last night, Big V. In the first half, the vibes are good. The Raptors are looking good, going toe-to-toe with an excellent team. The healthy Clippers, all this. And I started to think, is there a world in which the Raptors just pull off the type of run they did in the second half of last season? We're going to examine the likelihood of that coming up in just 1 second here. Before we do that, however, I do want to tell you about our friends over at Turo, which is the best place, the world's largest car sharing marketplace, the best place to go find a car for your trip. Full stop. Rental companies, they're out to grease you, man. They're like overly expensive. It was the most expensive thing when I went on my honeymoon this summer. The car rental just completely bled us dry compared to everything else. It's unbelievable, but Turo is here to help you book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. You can browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the UK, US, Canada, and very soon Australia as well. You can book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip. You can get a classic luxury car or a special, whatever, a limo, whatever you might want. People have limos up for grabs, I would assume. People just have them sitting around their driveways. They're using as Turo cars. Either way, whatever the occasion, birthday, graduation, just driving A to B, whatever it is, you can go and get yourself an affordable car for your trip, whatever you need it for. You can test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on as well to see how it fits into your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. So get rid of stupid rental car companies who are always out to charge you for the absolute most. Go with Turo. Every trip is backed by liability insurance as well. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our pals over at Built Bar, who, of course, have been sponsoring this podcast for a very long time and make the best tasting protein bars in the game. I'm not someone who typically likes protein bars. I find them to be gritty and sandy and gross and don't taste very nice in the mouth. Not very pleasant at all. But Built Bars, they have changed the game because they've made them delicious. It's like having a candy bar without actually having a candy bar. Right now, right in the throes of the holidays, I have so much garbage to eat that I was gifted at the holidays that's just kind of laying around the house, and I really need to start tricking myself into not eating it. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to start having Built Bars. I'm going to have them be like, oh, I'm indulging. I'm scratching that sweet tooth that I really, really have and can't seem to get rid of over the course of the holidays. The Built Bars are there to help you feel like you're indulging while actually giving you stuff that's going to power you through your day. They've got all sorts of fantastic flavors. They've got cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper right now. They've got the white chocolate peppermint granola as well. It's Built's take on a granola bar. It's more filling and still insanely tasty. And of course, you got the Built Puffs. There's a wonderful range of products for you to check out. Highly recommend them. They are delicious. Built, you got to try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. All right, we continue on here with Vivek Jacob of Raptors.com. As I promised before the break, I kind of want to examine what's coming up here for the Raptors and sort of the various outcomes we could see. Of course, last year, the Raptors struggled mightily in the first couple months of the season. Injuries, COVID, guys in and out of the lineup, figuring out the defense, all of that. And they, at one point, were 14-17, I believe. The Raptors are right now 15-19. And if you think back to last year, it was kind of right after Christmas where the Raptors kind of kicked into gear. They had that game against the Sixers that I believe they lost, but Siakam had a massive performance in, and then it all kind of bled into a really good run through January. And so I want to ask you now, Big V, as we're kind of at that same juncture of the season, the Raptors have some home cooking coming up, like we talked about off the top, against good teams, but, you know, they've shown that they can hang with good teams in recent times, taken the Nets deep. I think they went to overtime against the Nets, obviously. They had the Kings game, lots of pretty good competition with good teams of late, so it gives you hope they might be able to hang with these teams coming up on the schedule. Like, let me ask you, man, do you have any optimism, any sort of things that are standing out to you as reasons why you might believe the Raptors can actually go on a bit of a run similar to what they did last year, find themselves in that race for the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference? The top 5 might already be kind of separated and done, but I don't think the Knicks are scared anybody as the 6th seed, and it seems eminently gettable, 2.5 games back right now are the Raptors. What's your sort of optimism level of a potential repeat of what we saw in the back part of last year for this year's Raptors team?
Yeah, I'm just going to sound like, compared to you, I'm just going to sound real
Hating V. We love it. We love it.
I'm just a yin to your yang. We're going to put a positive spin on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see reasons right now to believe that they can go on a tear like they did to finish last season. What was it? 25-11 over the final 36 games,
34-17, I believe they were, as their sort of closing
the
stretch.
Yeah. So, I'm just gonna need to see a healthy Fred VanVleet. I don't think they can win on that level without him. I think he's too important to this team, and what he brings to the table when he's healthy, defensively, offensively, shooting the ball. I struggle to see that type of ceiling without him at full strength, and until I see that, it's not going to change my opinion. As well as Pascal is playing, Scotty, OG, Gary turning things around. The other thing that might help change my mind is a potential trade.
Yeah.
Right? Again, in terms of the playing style, in terms of the roster construction, they do need a legitimate big option.
Yes.
Clearly, if Nick Nurse is not willing to try out Khem Birch in a matchup against Ivica Zubac.
The furious texts from Big V to Sean last night about Khem Birch playing too late in the game. Unbelievable.
Then, it's clear that you need a legitimate big man option. Ideally, a guard who can shoot some threes would be nice as well. Malachi's doing a good job.
Yeah, they got Malachi, baby. You don't want to take away Malachi's minutes. Are you crazy? He's the second coming.
So those are the things I would need to see to believe in them pulling off a run like last year.
Yeah. I do think I'm with you that without an actual deal for a big man to address the very clear issues with rim defense and just like general size that the team obviously has, I think a run will be difficult to string together. I think, it's just, we saw it last night. The reasons why it was kind of weird. I was not that broken up about how the Raptors lost to the Clippers in that game, like via blow-bys from Norman Powell and Ivica Zubac's just dummying them on the inside, because I kind of know, that's the issue. Like, they have problems with perimeter defense, and they don't have a backline defender to kind of fix the problems and bang with a big dude underneath. Those are problems that we already knew about. This isn't something new revealing itself as like a new problem to kind of tackle. It's, okay, these are the things they have to address via trade. And particularly the center thing, I think the perimeter defense can be given a bit of a breather if there's actually a rim protector back there to clean up some messes, which they just haven't had. And so I wasn't like overly concerned about the way in which they lost to the Clippers, but I do think that is going to be an inhibitor to them stringing together a long enough, stretch of games here to really put together the type of finish we saw last season. So go make a trade. Go get, the Hartenstein Quickly duo from the Knicks is just like screaming at me. Please, go get those guys now. And maybe as Knicks keep on losing games, maybe that'll become more of a reality. We'll see.
Hey.
Also, the Wolves have Jalen Noel and Naz Reid just hanging out there too, as the Wolves lose all of the games as well. The number of times I've just like searched the trade machine for a pair of guard and big on sad team. It's kind of what I'm doing using all of my time for.
It's crazy how you've become a trade machine savant after.
I've totally become a trade machine sicko. It's great. I love it. You know what? Our pal the Zoobs. I've mentioned the Zoobs because I think the Zoobs is a really smart guy. He does, of course, Less Than Jay's podcast. God, I forgot the name for a second. And Zoobs' whole thing is, transactions are why sports are good. He's right. Transactions rock. And so I've fully thrown myself in. It's fun and cool. But anyway, besides that, I think the trade is necessary to really kind of solidify things. I do maybe have a counterpoint for you with the Fred thing. I know Fred's very good and he's very important. I'm still not sold on the idea of moving on from him as like a core piece on this team. Like I think the optimized version of Fred VanVleet is a perfect complement to what they have on the roster. That said, their best basketball last year came after the All-Star break when Fred was out or not himself for basically that entire stretch. They were really good. Scotty Barnes kind of became this second pillar next to Siakam and was the second best player on the team. He was outstanding. OG was nowhere near the player he is right now. He missed a ton of time, actually, in that back part of last season, as did Gary Trent Jr. Malachi Flynn is actually playing reasonable basketball. It seems like there's a little bit more depth on hand for this team than there was last year, even though the depth continues to be a concern and Juancho Hernan-Gomez just needs to simply make a freaking three, please. The depth's still a concern, but I don't think it's quite as dire as it was last year, where they were basically kind of rolling with 6 or 7 guys that they trusted most nights. I do think there's a way in which they can get on a bit of a heater, even if Fred is not himself, because we've seen it happen. What are the differences maybe between what happened in the back part of last season and right now that make you feel a little bit less optimistic about that? Is just the fact that that team had figured out how to play defense with one another, and this year it feels a little bit more sort of, hit or miss as to whether or not they're going to be on the string, as it were, at any given night?
Well, I think we need to discuss a certain guy who's been missing, Precious Achiuwa.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
He was an absolute marvel.
Coming back soon, though, baby. Maybe.
Yeah. And, hopefully he doesn't come back with the 3-point shot that he had to start the season.
That would be ideal.
And comes back with the one that he had, in the second half of last season. Mm-hmm. I think that negated some of Fred's shooting struggles. And while Fred did struggle offensively, I think it's kind of forgotten that he still played like 15 games after the All-Star break.
Yep.
I think, people look back and think he only played like 4 or 5 games, and sometimes maybe it feels that way, but he actually played 15 games, and defensively he was still very, very good.
Sure.
Like I still remember, William Liu kind of clipping all of those deflections that he was creating, and getting the Raptors out. And I think that aspect of it kind of being missing to an extent this season, or not to the degree that it was last season, where again, last season, I thought he was a legitimate all defensive team candidate,
Yeah.
and probably should have made that second team. I think that, two-way balance that he's able to, usually at least make up for on one end, if one end's, not where we expect. That's
Sure.
what's missing for me. And then again, the Precious element is huge. And the way he is usually able to combine with Chris Boucher with that pop off the bench, and that tag team. So yeah, those will be X factors for sure. Precious, I think, is the biggest X factor in, what happened in the second half of last season. And so if he can come back and be that player, not even necessarily be better, but if he can come back and be that player, then that really changes things, right? Like we saw him defend Giannis in stretches, Jokic, like whoever you wanted to throw him on, like he was looking in combination with OG as like two all-world defenders. And then you had Pascal kind of, playing off of them, and Chris Boucher playing off of them, and, being able to, just scamper all over the court. And that's how the defense kind of came together.
I mean, it should be said, Precious, I think I've been guilty of kind of forgetting Precious as part of the team while he's been out. He's been out a long time. I was at the game where he got hurt, actually, and that was ages ago. And I do think his impact on the defense has maybe been underplayed a little bit. He's really freaking good at that end. Even at the start of this season, when he was not playing well offensively at all, he was still wrecking things everywhere defensively. I mean, he's picking up Trae Young full court and just completely just flummoxing him. I think he both at once can help address the rim protection stuff, even though he's not a traditional 7-foot banger. I mean, his rim protection numbers last season were quite good. And you also combine that with the fact that he can be one of their best point of attack guys and address that hole as well. Obviously,
He also had a 20 rebound game this season.
Exactly, right? Like he's a very good defensive rebounder. He can get on the offensive glass. Can he convert on the offensive putbacks? He couldn't do that to start the year, but hey, that's fine. I do think his impact defensively really could help solidify things and just make things simpler for everybody else. And even if you don't get Fred back at full speed, I do think if you get something resembling the Precious, like something between early season Precious and late season last year Precious, I do think that's a pretty meaningful addition that maybe addresses a couple of your biggest holes kind of in one fell swoop. And that is massive. And I think a reason to feel kind of optimistic again about maybe a bit of a second half run. I don't think they're going to go, should be said, I don't think they're going to finish the season, winning 2 games to losing 1. They're not going to go and be a 66 win percentage team. But I do think there's enough there to be a 6 seed for sure. Like, it's not like they're that far out. The East, like the 3 teams in front of them directly, the Hawks, Pacers, and Heat, all have worse point differentials. They all have all sorts of problems, or are, in the Pacers' case, just like young and probably not going to sustain this all season long. And I just feel like there is room here for the Raptors to put together a pretty exciting second half, even if it's not going to quite reach the heights we saw last year. I'm willing to be optimistic about it. But again, my brain's broken, and I just might be happy-go-lucky fanboy for the entirety of the rest of time. We're going to talk about that in just one sec. But yeah, what
just
you got
quickly
to round it out? Yeah,
just quickly, I am with you on that.
Yeah.
I don't think the type of run that happened last season can happen, but I absolutely think the Raptors can be good enough to at least avoid the play-in.
Like if they go, what are they right now? They're 15-19.
Yep.
So the math on the fly here is going to be pretty embarrassing for me.
They're 2.5 games behind the Knicks in 6th place.
Yeah. So if can they go 30-18 to finish the season and get to 45-37? I don't think that's crazy. Like it's not maybe the most likely outcome. That's a lot of wins to pick up, but also
Yeah.
like, why not? I don't know. I'm not terribly worried about any of the teams directly in front of them in the East. I suppose it's the top five I'm worried about, and hey, they're already done with the Nets. It's great. They don't have to play those bastards anymore. And they got one left against the Sixers. Yeah, I don't know. We'll continue on. Come back on the other side. Get into the good, the bad, and the from the last couple nights, and we'll round this thing out. Before we do that, however, I do have to tell you about our friends over at betonline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest trends and odds for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro and college football to the basketball, whatever it's college basketball going on, the NBA season as we continue through, and also like the return of club soccer. It's lovely. Spurs coming out with a dud of a 2-2 draw with Brentford over the weekend. You love to see it. Get me back in that soccery mood after the World Cup. But if you want to throw some money down on soccer or whatever sport tickles your fancy, then BetOnline is the place to become the informed wagerer, to go ahead and do that. So you're not just throwing your money away indiscriminately. You're actually making bets that make sense, and you know why the odds have been set the way they have been set. They are your number one, fastest, and easiest way to get all of your betting info. Head to the website today. Your usual mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, we continue on here, rounding it out with the good, the bad, and the from the last couple of games or so from your Toronto Raptors. Let's start with the good. We have agreed to talk about Norman Powell in this spot of the show. Big V, Norm, the vibes, the tribute, obviously him torching the Raptors in the third quarter with a parade of drives to the rim and surprisingly keen assists to the corner and whatnot. I just kind of came away from last night thinking Norman Powell is going to be a fixture in our lives for the rest of time as Raptors fans. He is going to go down in the annals as one of the all-time Raptors capital G guys, and he's going to be someone who we capital R remember fondly for a very, very long time. What were your sort of takeaways? You were there, obviously, for the tribute, the ovations, all of that. Thoughts on Norm's return and just sort of Norm's status within Raptors history. It turns out, when you play for a team for 5 or 6 years that goes to the playoffs every year, you have all sorts of indelible moments that are just never going anywhere. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So the biggest good, first of all, is that Norman Powell is reunited with his championship ring.
Yeah.
I had asked him about, what it was like to see the banner as an opponent. And obviously he said the wonderful things about, always being a part of history and bringing the first NBA championship to this country, to the city, and how he still, looks back on some of the photos with fond memories and kind of reminisces. And then he revealed that, because he had the championship ring here, he never had the opportunity to actually get it to where he was. And so everything's kind of been a whirlwind the last couple years, and so this trip here was finally when he was able to get the championship ring back, and hopefully no issues with customs taking him back over the border.
Yeah, that might be a lot to declare. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So that was the biggest good. I mean, as far as Norman Powell, the player, the Raptor, a lot of fond memories. Love the way that he developed himself into a volume 3-point shooter. And that really, we always knew he was someone that could attack a closeout and get to the basket. But adding that element of 3-point shooting, volume 3-point shooting, I mean, he got to a point like that 2019-20 season, those games where, he would just pop off and have those almost consistently, 25 plus nights. That was something special for the Raptors. And yeah, just that mindset he brought, right? Like when you think of that core of Fred and Pascal, and Norm and the way
Kyle still.
And the way they kind of built themselves and are self-made men into how they're recognized today and respected today. That is a type of Raptor that I think the Raptors fan base loves the most, and really embraces. And So it was good to see him get the ovation that he deserved when that video tribute was made.
Dude played 67 playoff games for the Raptors. That's a lot of playoff games, man. Holy
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Great thing that Pacers dunk again in that video too.
So great. Yeah, our pal Jamar Hines put together a great smash cut as well of the very many great moments of Norman Powell with the Raptors. That Pacers dunk, obviously. Thinking back even before that, his summer league, whatever it was, 2015, I guess it would have been. Like, that is the only time. I'm not a summer league person. I don't think any of it really matters. That's the only time I've ever totally been totally just bought into a dude based on their summer league efforts. He was ridiculous in that summer in Vegas, and it kind of set the stage for him to do the G League path, come up mid-season, has that impact as a rookie. For me still, though, whenever I close my eyes and think about Norm Powell, I think about Game 3 in Milwaukee in 2017, where they're down. Wait, are they down 0-2? No, it's 1-1. Wait, they're down. No, it's 1-1. No, it's Game 4. They're down 2-1.
That's right. Down 2-1. Yeah, they are.
They
down
make the
2-1.
switch.
Yeah.
They make the starting lineup switch. They bring in Norm to start as the small ball 3 or whatever it is. And I just close my eyes and I just envision it swinging to him in the corner and him burying 3 after 3 or driving and dunking on the baseline. That game to me, he saved that series, and it also felt like the second they inserted him into the lineup and one of those swing possessions happened, it's oh, they solved the Bucks. It's over now.
Yeah.
They're going to be fine. There was such a comforting feeling to see that, and they of course go and win out in the next 3 games in that series, and I think Norm was just such a massive part of that. The Bucks killing stuff was just the stuff of legends with him. Yeah, man, Norm Powell, what a guy. We love Norm, and it was nice to see him back in Toronto. It snuck on me. It snuck up on me. I didn't realize he had not
some of the
been back in
off-court
Toronto
stuff too, right?
Yeah.
I'm
not your child.
With Rondé, and then
all summer long.
The Slam interview where
Yep.
he just couldn't stop laughing at Serge, and then Serge literally just leaves.
Yep. Also, Game 6 against the Celtics, if we're going on court moments. Game 6 against the Celtics.
Yeah.
I know it all kind of came crashing down with a really, really bad attempted layup and blocked by Marcus Smart in Game 7, but the Raptors do not win that Game 6 without Norm going off for 23.
Absolutely.
Playing into, they went to overtime in that game, right? I don't, that whole series is a bloody blur, and it angers me.
That was
the double OT. Yeah, it was a double OT game.
On the court game.
Yes, that was the double OT game. That was one of the more stressful experiences of my entire life. Quickly, let's run through the bad and the shall we? Let's go to the bad first. Do you have a bad from the weekend, Big V? You'd like to, I get the weekend, I don't know, the last week or so, 6 days since last we did a show. Anything that's coming to mind?
I think the bad is that the Raptors have these games where realistically it shouldn't get out of hand the way it does. And then, the fake comebacks are past expiry, long past expiry. Right? And so
one day it's going to be real. One day, maybe. Have they had an actual big comeback since the 30-point comeback against the Mavs, which we also just celebrated the 3-year anniversary of?
No, I think they had a few of them that 2019-20 season, right?
Yeah.
And then, but after that, it just hasn't happened. So, I think the way at times the rope has been let go is what concerns me, whether it be, defensive breakdowns, whether it be a lack of adjustments from Nick Nurse, and, more so big picture coming back to that, me criticizing not trying Kem Birch, that's where I'm like, okay, you know what? It's one thing to lose to this Clippers team, but to have the problems that Ivica Zubac was creating and not throw everything at it.
Christian Koloko was not the answer. Christian Koloko is about 1/3 of Zubac's width. It was not happening.
So unless he was just absolutely intent on sending a message to the front office, those are the things where that's the bad for me. It's there's games that have just gotten out of hand that there seem to be solutions that are at least worth pondering or
Sure.
experimenting with before it gets to that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. My bad, I think, is, kind of, I guess, sort of tied to the center question. Juancho Hernan-Gomez, I love watching him play. I love his positional soundness on defense. I love the way he seems to know exactly how the Raptors want to play on that end. I love the way he cuts off ball. I love when Thad Young throws bounce passes to him. But if he can't hit a damn three, which is kind of his whole thing, I don't know how viable he is. He goes 0-4 last night. It's just, he's got to hit threes, man. Last night was really, really rough in that department. And, he is one of those guys who can kind of help give you some cushion in the event Fred or Trent or OG is having an off night, and just didn't get it from him last night. You got to have it. And it's, I don't want him to be a difficult insertion into the lineup or the rotation, because he does do a lot of really good things, and I like watching him play, but if he's not going to hit his threes, it becomes way more untenable to have him out there. It's, it's the same problem Chris Boucher's having right now. It's like, just please stop bricking every timely three, please. Let's go to the round it out. What's your Big V?
My is basically, looking at this whole Scotty getting minutes at the center position. I mean, I feel like we've gone through this before, but it's like, if Scotty defending centers is his best means to success on the defensive end of the floor, what does that entail for a potential trade for a big? And how does Scotty defend the other positions from there?
Yeah.
What is the trickle down effect of that?
Yeah, that's a good question for sure. It's, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Carry on.
No. That's all.
Okay. No, I mean, yeah, I do feel like whoever you end up trading for, they're not going to be so good that you have to play them 35 minutes every night, probably. And so you probably are able to still get Scotty plenty of time as your nominal five, cut out the Coloco minutes, cut out the minutes for guys who just aren't getting it done in that spot, and maybe you just have yourself 48 good minutes of pretty solid center play. And, maybe there's ways to weaponize Scotty as sort of like a free safety style guy on defense, maybe less as a guy you need on the ball. Maybe he's sort of more in a Robert Williams type role. Not to say he's Robert Williams, because that dude is a monster. Please don't conflate those two things. You doing the same role and being the same guy, but like that feels like maybe the role he's best suited for right now, and maybe you can kind of just get creative in the way you deploy him if you do have a center next to him. But I don't think it would preclude me from trading for a center, but it does, I think, open up some very interesting questions, which is exactly what the section is for. For me, this is more of a personal Big V. I know I kind of have been texting you about this, but last night, all the reminders of the title and how awesome that season was with Kawhi and Norman Town and the highlight videos and all that stuff, it's kind of got me thinking, like, am I ever going to care as much about the Raptors winning a title as I did in 2019? Like, I kind of feel like I've beaten the game, as it were, as a fan. And it's like, oh, well, climb the summit. What else is there to do now? It's like if you've played the game Breath of the Wild. You beat Ganon, but you still got plenty of game left. You got side quests, you got shrines, you got Korok seeds to go and collect. And that's kind of the mode I'm in, like seed collecting mode as a fan at the moment, where it's like, yeah, they got the title, I'm cool. Like, I'm just kind of here doing side quests and sort of 100%ing this bad boy. And I kind of like it. It's nice. It's like a low stakes level of like non-stress basketball watching, but I do wonder if I'm ever going to like feel the way I did in 2019, where it felt like, God, they got to win this thing, otherwise my world is going to be over. I don't have that feeling right now. I'm not riding with the results the way I used to each and every game. And it's like a nice place to be, but I do kind of wonder if just like my brain is completely altered by the title, and I'm just never going to, like, we're almost at the point now where it's 4 years out from it. Like, at some point, you got to be like, the honeymoon phase is over. But I just don't know if it's ever going to be over for me. I might just be a different kind of fan now. and maybe that's fine. That's just something I'm thinking about. It's my that no one probably really cares about, because who cares what my fan inclinations are. Are you feeling this at all, Big V? Like, I'm very curious if I'm like on an island with this.
I no, I totally get what you're saying. I think the first one hits home the best.
Yep.
And I think for me, being a fan of different sports, like I had my power ranking as well in terms of which one I want the most, right?
Sure.
And so when India won the Cricket World Cup in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
that was like, it's weird to say, but that was almost, as a fan, that was like a weight off my shoulders. I was
Sure.
like, I've seen the biggest thing that I wanted to see as a sports fan.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watching the Raptors win the championship. Obviously, I've seen Manchester United win every trophy there is. And
Rub it in, why don't you?
So in that sense, it's definitely taken that angst away as a sports fan. And there's times where I'm just like, man, like the only thing that's really left for me to see now is like Netherlands win the FIFA World Cup one day, right? The men's. And like if that happens, that'd be, it almost like completes the set, as you were alluding to with the, kind of gotta catch them all.
I'm just gonna go forward and let you think that Pokemon and Zelda are the same. It's cool. It's not gonna bother me. That's fine. I'm not gonna correct you. Yeah. It's weird, this whole sports fandom thing. I mean, I like it. I'm just kind of at the phase where, Pascal Siakam did crazy cool things. That's all I need, baby. We're good. It's kind of a nice place to be.
It would be very cool. I mean, with how much you and a lot of people love Pascal, I mean, for him to bring a championship here.
Yes. Yeah.
Like as like the main guy.
Yeah.
That would hit different for sure. And like if that were to happen, he would absolutely be the greatest Raptor of all time.
Of course, yeah. I mean, he's gonna have a case probably by the end anyway, I would imagine. But
yeah,
he's awesome, dude. He's so good.
Yeah.
This is also admittedly yes, yeah. Give him that Supermax, baby. This is also admittedly me being in the middle of December, being like, I don't really care about the results. Talk to me in April. I'll probably be losing my mind like a sicko again. So we'll round it there. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We went a little long today, but we had a lot of ground to cover. We'll be back again tomorrow. I might do a little holiday mailbag situation. So if you have questions, you can always drop them in the comments on this here episode. If you made it to minute 48, drop in your questions for tomorrow on the show. I'll put a little prompt on the YouTube channel and on Twitter as well. So we'll just run through your mailbag questions and head off into a couple of fun games against the Grizzlies and Suns. Jamar Hines is going to be around on Friday to break down the Grizzlies game. That'll bring us to the end of the week, and then we're back to the 5-a-week schedule as of next week. Thank you for being cool with some holiday time baked in here for the show. Big V, anything you would like to promote for the good people out there?
The usual stuff. I mean, all the World Cup stuff is out the way, so just head to Raptors.com, head to my Twitter at Vivek Jacob for everything I'm doing.
Speaking of achieving all you can as a sports fan, having seen the World Cup final, maybe I just don't watch soccer anymore. It's done. It's solved. I'm watching that stupid Tottenham-Brentford game, and I'm like, you know what? This sucks. Anyway, that'll do it. We'll be back again on Thursday with your mailbag episode. Thanks so much, and go make your second listen of the day. Locked On Leafs, as the Buds are real good, and our pals Mike and Dave covering the team are also real good. Go check them out. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.